Okay, I'll call the May 11th, 2020 regular meeting of Jersey Shore School Board of Directors to order. Mr. Enders, could you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Brungard.
Here.
Mrs. Dobler.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Okay. Dr. Dady, communications.
You want to do the Pledge of Allegiance and announce that we had a executive session as well?
I was going to announce that during President's Report, but we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
which it
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, under communications, we have a letter here from the Lycoming County Commissioners, and it says that it's dated April 29th to the Jersey Shore Area School District. On behalf of the Lycoming County Commissioners, the Lycoming County would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the kindness and generosity you extended to the community during the COVID-19 pandemic and the use of your high school parking lots to facilitate the phasing in of county recycling. We have received many accolades from the community on how well things are working. Many seem to have had their spirits lifted by being able to embark on something familiar during these unfamiliar times. The healing begins with help from individuals like yourself who are willing to be of service to your community. Signed Scott Metzger, Tony Massar, and Richard Marabito. So I don't know how many were able to take the opportunity to do the recycling up there, but I think it did go very well. And they just wanted to show their appreciation for allowing us to use the high school parking lot for that purpose. That is the only communication I have at this time.
Okay. I'd just like to announce we had executive sessions on May 6th and May 11th for legal and personnel purposes. I also attended the PSBA liaison conference call or Zoom meeting last week. Just a few items to highlight from that meeting. One is that the property tax freeze legislation that everybody keeps talking about is still apparently several votes short, or many votes short, of going to the full House. And there was other discussion on whether the freeze for 21-22 is going to happen, and apparently that's essentially just water cooler talk at this time. There's no official discussions in committee or on the floor. One cautionary was there are a lot of projections for budget savings for the remainder of this current school year. And although the early results indicate that that's a legitimate trend, the caution was to not use that information too heavily in our budgeting for the next year, because there may well be other costs that we have not planned on at this point, such as, will we be required to provide PPE for students and staff? Will the buildings require new ventilation requirements? And things of that nature. So that's, it's nice that the early indicator is that there's some savings, but there's some lagging indicators that may offset those savings. State budgeting is still in flux. They continue to talk about a partial year of 5 to 6 months, and they would do that at a lower level, and then hopefully as the year went by, they would budget for the remaining portion of the year after they were able to have some recovery of economic activity after COVID. And the concern was that they're projecting right now, depending on the slope of the economic recovery, that the state revenues would be down between $850 million and $1 billion statewide. The other thing they discussed is cyber, and PSBA has started focusing their cyber initiatives on 3 tiers of cyber funding. I believe the way it is now that it's either all or nothing. They're either, if they have any disability, a student has a disability at all, then they get 100% of the special ed funding. And a 3-tier would raise that depending on the number of disabilities and the severity of the disabilities that each student would have. So, and then the last thing, that there's a lot of discussion about graduation. There were 2 schools that reported that they had already announced, and these were in the still in the red areas of the state, and they had announced a virtual only graduation, and they received huge backlash from the community. And their cautionary tale was that they did not include the public and parents in their conversations. That and even though one of the schools had included the class advisors and class officers, it did not go well with parents, and they got a lot of grief over it. Their advice is to make sure that we include the public in that decision making, especially if we're going to go to a virtual only, which it doesn't sound like we're going to do because we're not in the red section of the state. The other thing that I received from PSBA is they have what they call PSBA Delegate Assembly, and that assembly meets in November on a Saturday at 9 a.m. It'll be held this year in Cumberland Valley School District or via Zoom, depending on what our status is at the time. It looks like our district is eligible to have 2 representatives for that, and these are really they're kind of policy making meetings of governing bodies. So if anybody is interested in this, we need to send, if we're going to have somebody represent the school district, they need to be received no later than Monday, August 31st, 2020. I would like to get some volunteers earlier than that if possible. I would be certainly willing to fill one of those seats. It makes sense to the president to fill one. I'm not sure who else goes to this in the past. I did not get this invitation for last year's delegate meeting. I assume because they still had perhaps Kelly as the point of contact for the school district. So if anybody's interested at all, let me know, and I'll send you a copy of the delegate form that describes all the duties and what this is all about. So, and that's all I have for President's Report. Intermediate unit.
I have nothing to report. Our meeting will be next Wednesday, May 20th.
Thank you, Ms. Ostrowski.
Yep.
Superintendent's Report.
All right, there are 4 or 5 items here. One of them is, speaking of graduation plans, let you guys know that we'd be talking about that today. Stephen's finalizing that, and it's pretty much done. It's very detailed. The details will go out to seniors in the next couple of days. Ours is not virtual. But we obviously cannot have a large-scale ceremony where everybody comes due to the social restrictions regarding 25 or less. But this plan does allow the Just to give you a teaser to this plan does allow the students to still come across the stage and receive their diploma. And it'll all be, we're hoping to be able to live stream it, but it will at least be videotaped as well so that it could be posted for others to view. But we're trying to make sure it gets set up to live stream. We'll still be on the same day that it was scheduled, on June 6th. And again, all seniors will be getting the directions of the procedures for that. Due to the social restrictions, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to hold the awards ceremony, but we have that incorporated. The announcement of those things will be incorporated in the graduation ceremony. And again, look for the next couple days from Mr. Keene and Mrs. Seagraves for the details that'll be emailed to all the seniors. We'll also have quite a few of the security guards there as well to make the traffic pattern go around. But again, unfortunately, due to the restrictions, we won't be able to have a bunch of people there viewing it live. But we do have a plan to allow it all to happen physically. There is a contract with UPMC that is listed there under Superintendents Report. This is the same contract that we had the previous year. The district receives therapy services through UPMC. It used to be through Hope Enterprises, but on October 14th of last year, the board approved a contract assignment for services to go to UPMC through June 30th. So this contract is for the 2021 school year. So that'll move over as an approval item at the next meeting. The Girls on the Run and Heart and Soul. These are already presentations that were made to you in previous years. Just letting you know that those two programs, that the Girls on the Run is the elementary version. Heart and Soul is Girls on the Run at the middle school level. Those plans are going to continue for next year, because I know I think the registration for the fall is already open for that. We also have a schedule that will start going out to families in the next week or so regarding how student belongings can be picked up at the buildings now that we're in the yellow phase. And it's different for the varying levels, because with a self-contained or primarily self-contained classroom, like at the elementary level, that's a lot easier than, say, the high school level that might have to drop things off or pick things up from various classrooms. So students and families will be notified of that over the next week or so, and that pickup plan is going to happen the last week of May.
Can I interject?
Yes, Eric.
Sorry, but you have a pickup plan. What about
what?
Frozen.
Frozen? I've heard it's a pretty good movie. Other than that.
2 is as good as the first.
Harry, I don't. All right. Well, Harry may have to ask me that question later, because I'm assuming he might have got kicked off and he might be re-entering here soon. But he can ask me the question at that time. But anyway, the last week, there's about 3 days, and there'll be varying times that people will be able to come in and pick up their stuff. Pat is also arranging at that time for 8th grade to drop off, basically collect the 8th grade iPads and the iPads from the seniors during that. But again, all the parents will be getting communication on that either the end of this week or beginning of next. I believe it's on the 18th that stuff's going out, so they know the times that they'll be able to come in and get their belongings. They will have to follow all the guidelines with the masks and everything like that to do so, and we will have school personnel in the buildings during that time to keep an eye on everything while going on. There will be a limit to the number of kids that'll be able to go in at a time. So that's why it's going to be kind of open times that families can come, and why it's varying. There's even an evening time on Thursday. That's the 28th. there's even an evening time if the morning or afternoon times don't work for certain things. Outside of that, is Harry back on yet? Harry's not back on yet.
He's
So-
working it. He did confirm that he went down.
Okay. Well, he can ask me that question when he comes back. Do you want to go ahead and do your budget update, Ben? Mr. Enders?
Sure. So I provided 2 attachments to the agenda. The first one I will go through is our standard budget update. From the last meeting of April 27th through the changes through May was primarily the changes through the whole month of April. So we have a deficit, current budget deficit right now is $1,117,160. The unassigned fund balance at year end as a percentage of budget expenditures is 6.68%. And the total committed and unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget expenditures is 12.44%. Going through the changes, you'll see a lot of changes in the various departments. We did meet with the departments to look at budget reductions for them. Since January 27th, grand total of budget changes for the different departments is $136,500 approximately. Then on the revenue side, you'll see an update to real estate taxes, which we will talk about shortly, due to updated assessed values. And the primary changes in revenue is from our last meeting. We discussed about setting our state revenue to our 1920 projected amounts. So grand total revenue decreased by $335,000, and that's primarily made up of the basic ed subsidy reduction of $239,000, the special ed subsidy reduction of about $28,000 there. Any questions regarding the budget update or the budget changes?
I kind
And
of
I missed that all, but I just had a couple questions on it, but I just got back online here. My internet went down again. Probably happened again the night before the meeting's over, but go ahead. I'll catch up later on, I guess.
Okay. Was that you, Mr. Petrosky?
Yeah. I kind of wondered, so it looks like you reduced revenue since the last update by about $875,000. And if you wouldn't have done that, our deficit would only be around $242,000 rather than $1,117,000.
Well, the revenue reductions are on page 5. Those are $335,000, and those were primarily what we discussed at the last meeting, was changing our subsidy amounts back to what basically flatlining the subsidy amounts to the 1920 projected amounts, and not going with the governor's proposal as was originally put in the budget back in February.
Is that what the state gave you guys for as well, Ben, is to try to flatline?
Everything we're hearing out of Harrisburg is that don't expect any increases next year in subsidies. I see Mr. Allen shaking his head, so I'm assuming he's hearing very similar things through his channels.
Exactly.
I do have a question here. The expenditures are $250 less. Is that attributed to maybe the actual closing of the schools with the electric or whatever that we may have saved, or what is that from?
The expenditures are just cuts that the departments have made. A lot of those are in buildings and grounds. Mr. Wall and I reviewed all his budget areas and felt comfortable with these reductions that are making in those utility budget amounts for next year. So they're just reductions in the budget.
For what personnel made?
With closures currently going on.
Okay, the committed fund balance. That went from 282 to 917. Did we commit some more monies into that for, I guess it was for Peasers? Is that because of more for the retirement fund?
I'm not.
And then again, I'm sorry, Ben, but I'm going back to the budget from March 9th, I guess. I'm comparing it to that because I have a hard copy of that in front of me.
There would have been no increases in the commitments from last year. You're referencing 917,000. I think that is the amount that is being used out of those committed fund balances to balance the budget for next year. So that's actually the reduction of those committed fund balance. That's why it's a negative.
And those funds are still used for the intended purpose, correct, Mr. Enders?
That is correct.
Is that all the questions for Ben?
I do have, if there's no other questions, I'll move on to the conversation concerning real estate tax rates. As we had talked last meeting, this meeting would kind of be the one that sets the guidance for the next meeting there will be an agenda item on what to set the real estate tax rates at. I guess you could say it's the final step or the last step for real estate tax rates, because that's an agenda item that gives me direction on how to calculate the final budget and how to calculate our homestead farmstead exclusion and how to create the real estate tax resolution that will be on the agenda for the first meeting in June. I provided you an update with our real estate tax rates, essentially 6 options that we have. The budget rate now sits at the real estate tax rates at the rebalanced millage rate. With that rate, Clinton County is the one that's getting rebalanced this year. There would be a $4.05 increase on a home valued at approximately $100,000. And in Lycoming County, it would be $2.25 for a home assessed at $100,000. These are approximate amounts. And the reason why the reduction is from the last meeting, because last time we discussed this, they were about the same, is there was an actual increase in Lycoming County's assessed values, and there's been a decrease in Clinton County's assessed values. So that's where the reason why Lycoming County went down. I did ask Clinton County the reason for the reduction, and it was not a clerical error. There was an actual parcel eliminated off the rolls in the last month. So my question to the board is, is the board comfortable moving forward and placing on the agenda the real estate tax rates at the rebalanced rate?
Is there anyone opposed to proceeding with that plan?
What other choice do we have? It's the only choice we have, isn't it, or not?
Well, there's other options. You could increase them to 50% of the index. There's 75% of the index. There's a full index. And then to go to a lesser amount, you can put a no increase to Clinton County or no increase to Lycoming County.
Has the state said anything about the having a freeze or not? I mean, I know they've been talking about it, but has anything been set in stone?
No. That's what Craig was talking about earlier.
No.
Didn't you mention before something about rebalancing is easier or more straightforward, or as opposed to trying to keep it at zero?
Right now, the way the tax rates are calculated, it is impossible to have a no increase for both counties in any one year.
Right.
Because if you do a no increase to Clinton County, Lycoming County actually goes down. If you do a no increase to Lycoming County, Clinton County actually goes up. I'm going to hopefully find out some more information this week on how the state is going to handle the calculation of real estate taxes for a multi-county district if they would go forward with the legislation to freeze them. Because right now, the way I honestly use the calculator in the 2028 to calculate the rates, that's why I know they're the official rates. The state's gonna have to redo that calculator to get them to zero, if that's what they would choose to do. That maybe they might say that multi-county school districts can go to rebalance rate, because that is the state's methodology of stating what the rate should have been last year. It looks at the market values in the state tax equalization board and balances the rates based on those statewide figures.
When you say last year, you're talking about the current year, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, clearly the rebalancing rates, if they would end up being this or very close, they're very insignificant, and it's. I don't think we should. I don't think we should increase. I think the rebalancing rate or something close to that is the way to go.
Which would mean no tax increase, correct?
Effectively, yes.
It'd be very minimal based on what he was saying regarding, what was it, $2 and some odd cents, Ben, at the one and $5 at the other or something?
Just because of the readjustment would be the only increase.
Yes.
Would not be taxed to the index or anything. It would just be the readjustment for the different counties.
That's correct.
I can buy that. I think our people deserve that at this time.
Any other questions for Ben?
Well, just to add to that, I think the national unemployment rate now is pushing up close to 15%, and the real unemployment rate is above 20. And not knowing what that recovery curve is going to look like, I think we need to do whatever we can to minimize at least any tax increases we have. And this sounds like the way to go.
Agreed.
You will not see any official rates on the next agenda. It will simply state to set the real estate taxes at the rebalance millage rates. So that way I'll get another update of assessed values. Then we'll set the actual physical rates for the first meeting of June. So just wanted to let you know that the next agenda, all it will say is to set real estate tax rates at the rebalance millage rate.
But we would assume that it's not going to be much different than what we're seeing right now.
I would assume that correct.
Yeah. That's good.
These assessed values are the end of April, and Lycoming County probably said there's probably already going to be no changes because they're not really doing anything at the county courthouse right now.
Right.
All right. Any other questions for Ben? We do have the feasibility study presentations coming at the next board meeting, but I want to end this on a very positive note. So I want to send a big thank you to Jana Riggle and Michelle Long, for those of the senior class advisors, for all the work they've done with Mr. Keene and Elizabeth Seagraves, Dr. Seagraves, in getting this graduation plan together, along with the students that that Mrs. Long and Mrs. Riggle worked with throughout this process. As when they pick up their cap and gowns, they're picking up something else as well to place in their yard. So these were all made for the seniors, that if they want to put it in their yard, so they can show off that they are one of the graduates this year. that'll be placed in there as well. So a big thank you for them to getting these things around for our seniors. So that concludes the superintendent's report, Mr. Allen.
Okay. All right, we'll go to public comment. And unless anybody has any objection, we'll do the way we have done for the, since we started our virtual meetings, and combine the agenda items and non-agenda items in the first public comment session. Are there any objections to that?
No.
Okay. If you'd announce the phone number, please.
Yes. For those of you that would like to call in for the public comment time, that number is 570-398-5576. Again, it's 570-398-5576. Don't forget there's a slight delay, so even when you're talking, you have to wait a few seconds to hear yourself, but we really need you to turn down the volume at your house so you don't get the feedback through the system. Mr. Allen, I misspoke. The feasibility study is not till June, not the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The presentations, I should say. Again, if you'd like to call in for the public comment time, it's 570-398-5576. I'm assuming there's no issues, it's just that no one's called in. All right. I just want to make sure there weren't any issues before we close courtesy of the floor. All right, thanks, Pat. However long you want to wait, Mr. Allen, no one has tried to call in.
Okay, we started at 7:31, so we'll hold courtesy floor till 7:36 unless somebody calls. We'll sit here and stare at each other.
Don't worry, the long awkward pause is almost over.
We do have a call. Hello, Jersey Shore Area School District, courtesy of the floor.
Hi.
Can you speak your name and your address, please?
Hi, this is Pam Garrett, Watson Township. I would just like to thank Mr. Keene and Mrs. Seagraves and everyone that's working on graduation for making it, making the kids able to walk, let them walk regardless of how it's being done, even if the parents can't be there. We don't know what the situation is, but I just want to say thank you very much from our family to you guys for making it happen and making what has been not so good for them a great day. And thank you very much, Mr. Keene.
Again, the number is 570-398-5576 if you'd like to call in. Thank you, Mrs. Garrett. I'm sure Mr. Keene would want me to let you know that not only himself, but all the people that worked with him, they do deserve a huge thanks from everyone involved.
Okay, we're coming up on 7:39. And unless anybody has any objection, I'd like to close courtesy of the floor. Does anyone object? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close at 7:39, which should be coming up any second now. Okay, courtesy of the floor is closed. We'll move on to personnel. And I'm requesting a motion to add item F to personnel. And item F would be the appointment of Dr. Brian Ulmer as interim superintendent effective June 1st, 2020 at a salary prorated to his full-time position of $10,583.33 for the month of June. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
Second.
That's
Is that Mr.
Brungard.
Yes.
We have Mary and Mr. Brungard. Any discussion on any of those items? Okay, hearing none. I'm sorry. Was somebody trying to say something? Okay, hearing no questions or discussion, could you take a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, moving on, we have nothing under curriculum instruction.
Wait a minute, wasn't that just add F?
Oh, I'm sorry, yep. I'm sorry, thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Can we now have a motion to approve personnel items A through F?
So moved, Mary.
I'll second. This is Dave.
Thank you. Again, any discussion on those items? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Enders, please.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes,
9-0.
thank you. Now we'll move on. Curriculum instruction, we have nothing. Building and grounds, we have nothing under building and grounds. Finance, we have items A through D. We have a motion on items A through D.
So moved, Mary.
Second, Harry.
And we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I just
I just have a question on the pay date letter. Do we, is everybody on direct deposit, or do they have a choice?
I knew we had one employee that was not on direct deposit. That was not a professional employee under any of the contracts, was one of our ancillary positions. I think since then he has actually moved to direct deposit, so I believe right now everybody is on direct deposit.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would just for, as, I guess, semantics, items C and D, it would be those items as recommended by the Capital Projects Committee rather than as approved by. Any other questions or comments on A through D? Mrs. Thomas and Mr. Brungard, would you be okay with those motions and second as amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, moving on to miscellaneous. We have items A through D.
So moved. Mary,
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Brungard. Any discussion or questions on items A through D? Hearing no questions, can we have a roll call, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Dover,
I do have a problem with D, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna have to vote no.
Mrs. Grant, Mrs. Grant, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. I just realized that. So to be clear, are we voting A through D now, or is D?
A,
So
A through D is what the motion is.
it will affect B and C. Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
I would say no on for D too, but we didn't fill that out, so. yeah. So I guess yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
8-1.
I'd like to make a comment here. If Dr. Dady could just give a summary for parents to understand why we had B and C suspension of policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the suspension of those policies is because of the way those policies are written. There are specific items in there, for example, that says that students would receive certain grades every 9 weeks, how that would be based on the assessments they receive, and because we were unable to fulfill those, but also some of those were based on things that the state already passed, like that the PSSAs and NOCTIs and all those, that our graduation requirements require some of those things to have been done. So it's issues like that as to why we needed to suspend those policies in order to hold the students harmless regarding our seniors and graduation, as well as some of the promotion requirements.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add that too, that there were some questions that we're getting from the public on report cards, and just recommend that they continue to contact their building principals the same as they would for any other academic issues with their student.
Yeah, when it comes especially to the secondary students, because they do a end of the year average, the action taken tonight by the board with those policies allow the middle school and high school to complete their process on how they are doing those end of the year averages. And so this allows all of that to happen. If it's mathematically possible that kids would pass, then they'll pass. And so all that can be done now. PSBA also recommended that those policies be suspended as well. That's a part that Mr. Kenyon reminded me of as well. And so now that that's done, we can go ahead and close out the year for students.
Are there any board members that have received specific questions regarding report cards and graduations?
Yes, I have. From the high school specifically, the parents did not understand what the report card that was just mailed home, as there was very little guidance and clarity provided. So I did receive multiple questions about that.
Is that a question for me?
No, Mr. Allen asked if there were questions from the public to the board members, and my response was yes.
So again, recommendation for all of us, if somebody contacts us, should be for them to contact the building superintendent. Okay. Old business, we have nothing on the agenda for old business. Courtesy of the floor, we already did. And at this point, we'll move into executive session for legal and personnel, after which no additional business will be conducted.
Are we off the air?
Not yet. Hold on.
You gotta give Pat a minute.